Ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you something. There comes a time in your life when the noise doesn't matter anymore. The opinions, the chaos, all that fades into the background. Because you've lived, you've seen things, you've felt pain, you've carried the weight of years and still kept walking. And now silence. Silence becomes your power. You don't need to be loud to be heard. You don't need to argue to be right, because real strength doesn't shout. It stands still, quiet, calm, unshaken. See, when you were younger, you felt like you had to be everything to everyone. Please them. Fix them. Explain yourself to people who were never listening in the first place. But now you know. You don't owe anyone a damn explanation for choosing peace over drama. You're not selfish for focusing on yourself. You're wise. You've paid your dues. You've raised your kids, fought your battles, cried in silence, smiled through storms. You've done it all. And now it's your time. Let people talk. Let them misunderstand you. Let them wonder why you're so quiet now. They don't know what you had to survive just to be here. You don't have to show up for every argument. You don't have to clap back. You don't need to prove yourself anymore. Peace is proof enough. And let me tell you this, the most powerful man, the most powerful woman is the one who knows themselves and still chooses silence. So as you get older, don't waste time explaining. Don't waste energy defending. Just live. Focus on your breath, on your soul, on your truth. You're not just older, you're stronger. You're not just wiser, you're quieter. And in that quiet, there's fire. Focus on yourself. Protect your peace. And let silence speak your legacy. Silence protects your peace in ways that are often underestimated. In a world filled with constant noise, opinions flying from every direction, and an endless stream of chatter, silence becomes a sacred space, a boundary that separates your soul from the chaos outside. As we age, we begin to understand this truth on a deeper level. The same conversations that once felt urgent now feel unnecessary. The debates you used to engage in now seem exhausting. The need to prove your point fades, and the desire for internal peace takes its place. Silence isn't about weakness. It's not about having nothing to say. It's about having the wisdom to know when saying something doesn't serve your well-being. You learn that not every situation requires your voice. Not every argument deserves your energy. Silence becomes a decision, a discipline, and eventually a way of life. It's where healing begins. It's where reflection happens. And it's where your truest thoughts start to rise to the surface. In silence, you gain clarity. You can hear your intuition louder. You start to understand what matters and what doesn't. When you're not speaking just to respond or defend, your mind slows down. You begin to process feelings that you ignored while life kept moving. You revisit moments that shaped you. And slowly, you start reclaiming parts of yourself that got buried under years of responsibilities, relationships, and expectations. The beauty of silence is that it creates space. Space to feel. Space to breathe. Space to decide how you want to react, if you want to react at all. Most people operate on impulse. They speak without thinking, react without pausing, and spend their lives trapped in cycles of conflict and regret. But silence breaks that cycle. It's the pause that stops the damage. It gives you the time to choose peace instead of pride, stillness instead of stress. As you grow older, you begin to value your peace more than your ego. You'd rather walk away from the noise than prove you're right. You'd rather be misunderstood than lose sleep over something that doesn't deserve your attention. That's because silence isn't passive. It's protective. It shields your energy from being drained. It guards your mind from unnecessary drama. It allows you to stay centered, even when everything around you is chaotic. There's a strength in not reacting. There's a quiet confidence in sitting still while the world tries to pull you into its storm. When you've lived enough years, seen enough things, felt enough heartbreak, and walked through enough fire, you begin to realize that peace is the greatest form of power, and silence is how you protect it. There will always be people who misunderstand your silence. They'll call it arrogance or indifference. But that's only because they haven't learned the value of peace yet. They're still chasing validation, still trying to win arguments, still seeking approval. But you're on a different path now. You've seen what noise can do to your spirit. You've seen how it chips away at your joy, how it robs you of your calm, how it makes you forget who you are. And you've made the decision to protect yourself. Silence doesn't mean isolation. It doesn't mean cutting people off. It simply means you've learned how to choose your battles, how to filter what enters your mental space, how to stay true to yourself without constantly explaining yourself. When someone tries to provoke you and you choose silence, you're not avoiding conflict, you're choosing mastery. When you stay silent in the face of gossip, criticism, or negativity, you're not weak. You're in control. It takes strength to stay calm when others are trying to stir chaos. It takes wisdom to listen more than you speak. And it takes love, deep self-love, to protect your peace like it's sacred, because it is. Your peace is not something you give away freely anymore. You've earned it. You've sacrificed for it. You've fought too hard and come too far to let anyone steal it with words that don't matter. Silence is a boundary. It says, I respect myself enough to walk away. It says, I won't entertain what disturbs my balance. And it says, my peace is more valuable than your noise. As you walk further into the later chapters of life, silence becomes less of a reaction and more of a lifestyle. You begin to live with intention. You begin to speak only when necessary. And most importantly, you begin to rest in the comfort of knowing that you don't need to respond to everything. You're at peace, and silence is how you keep it. As we grow older, something begins to shift deep within us. The energy we once poured outward into people, into approval, into ambitions, into noise, starts to turn inward. It's not that we stop caring about the world. It's that we begin to understand that true power, true peace, and true purpose don't come from outside of us. They come from within. This inward focus isn't sudden. It's a quiet unfolding, a gradual awareness that the answers we've been chasing have always been sitting inside, waiting for us to slow down and listen. In youth, it's all about proving yourself. You're constantly measuring, comparing, striving. You want to be seen. You want to be heard. You want to matter in the eyes of others. But with age, the applause fades, and you no longer chase the crowd. You start asking different questions. Not how do they see me, but how do I see myself? Not what do I want to achieve, but what do I want to feel? that shift, that subtle redirection of your gaze from the outside world to your inner world is one of the most powerful transformations that happens with age. You begin to see time differently. You realize it's not limitless. That understanding forces you to become more selective. Selective with your energy, your attention, your emotions. You no longer waste your days pleasing people who will never be pleased. You no longer sacrifice your peace for people who wouldn't do the same for you. You start to protect your inner world like it's your home, because it is. You begin to understand that no matter where you go, your thoughts follow, your emotions travel with you, your habits, your patterns, your regrets, your peace, it all lives inside. And so you start building something strong there. This inward focus teaches you presence. You begin to listen more closely to your own needs. You pay attention to what drains you, what fuels you, what uplifts and what diminishes you. You spend more time in silence, not because you're lonely, but because you've discovered how rich the silence can be. You learn that fulfillment doesn't always look like success. Sometimes it looks like stillness. Sometimes it looks like saying no. Sometimes it looks like sitting alone with a cup of tea, watching the sun set and feeling grateful just to be alive. The inner world becomes more vivid. You start revisiting memories you didn't have time to process before. You start forgiving people, not for their sake, but for your freedom. You start healing from things you thought you had buried, but which still lived in you like shadows. And in doing all this, you start coming home to yourself. There's a certain wisdom that comes with age. It tells you that the people who truly matter don't need explanations. That peace doesn't come from having a perfect life, but from knowing how to sit with imperfection. That joy isn't something to chase. It's something to recognize in the ordinary moments. When your focus shifts inward, you begin to find joy in things you once overlooked. A quiet morning, a deep breath, the way your body carries you, even after all it's been through. You begin to see yourself not just as a doer or a giver, but as a soul that needs tending to. You also start letting go of roles you no longer need to play, letting go of identities that were built around survival, letting go of the need to fix others, change others, or save anyone but yourself. This isn't selfishness. It's self-respect. It's the realization that your inner peace is your responsibility and no one else's. That if your cup is empty, you have nothing to give. So you start filling it little by little with things that nourish you. Stillness, reflection, gratitude, truth. This shift inward can feel lonely at times. The world is loud and it praises loudness. It often sees introspection as weakness, as passivity. But when you start living from the inside out, you learn to trust yourself more deeply. You stop second guessing. You stop waiting for permission. You know what aligns with your spirit, and you quietly walk in that direction. You begin to live not from reaction, but from intention. And with each passing year, you realize that this journey inward is not about escaping the world. It's about moving through it with more grace. It's about making decisions that are rooted in awareness, not urgency. It's about finding meaning not in the spotlight, but in the quiet corners of your life. You're no longer chasing a version of success defined by others. You're building a life that feels whole from the inside. And the deeper you go within, the more you realize that's where the real freedom lies. ChatGPT said wisdom doesn't argue because it has nothing to prove. It has seen the rise and fall of pride, the futility of ego-driven battles, and the exhaustion that comes from trying to convince those who are not ready to understand. Wisdom knows that silence is not surrender. It's a strategic retreat into peace. It has learned through experience that most arguments are not about truth, but about control, validation, and the need to be right. And when you've lived long enough, when you've been through enough, you come to a place where you value peace more than being right. There's a calm that wisdom brings, a stillness that doesn't get easily shaken by provocation. When you were younger, you may have felt compelled to respond to every criticism, every disagreement, every wrong assumption about you. You may have stayed up late defending yourself in conversations that went nowhere. But time has a way of peeling away that need. It teaches you that arguing with someone who is committed to misunderstanding you is not just unproductive, it's a waste of life's precious energy. And wisdom guards that energy like treasure. People often mistake wisdom's silence for weakness. They think that if you don't fight back, you must be afraid or uncertain. But that's only because they haven't tasted the kind of strength that lives in restraint. Wisdom knows how to measure battles, and most of them simply aren't worth it. Not because you don't have something to say, but because you've learned that truth doesn't need to be shouted to exist. It just is. You don't need to raise your voice to make a point when your life, your presence, and your peace already speak louder than words. Arguments are often battles of ego. Each person digs into their position not to learn, but to win. Wisdom doesn't care about winning. It's not in a competition. It's seen the damage that pride can do, how it burns bridges, breaks hearts, and blinds people to what really matters. When you carry wisdom, you've learned the cost of speaking when silence would have been enough. You've seen how a single sentence can escalate tension, how a defensive tone can turn a moment of misunderstanding into a long-term conflict. So now you choose differently. You listen more. You pause. You walk away when necessary. This isn't avoidance. It's alignment. You're aligned with a deeper truth, one that says peace is more powerful than dominance. Wisdom lets others have the last word, not because it's conceding, but because it's conserving. You learn that it's okay if others think you're wrong. It's okay if they don't see your side. You no longer need agreement to feel secure. Your validation comes from within, from knowing who you are and what you stand for. When wisdom speaks, it does so carefully, intentionally, not to be right, but to be real. And when the space isn't right, when the other person isn't listening, wisdom holds back. Not every truth needs to be delivered. Not every opinion needs to be shared. There's timing to truth, and wisdom waits for it. It understands the power of timing, the weight of words, and the damage of speaking too soon or too sharply. You see, wisdom doesn't just avoid arguments. It transcends them. It sees them for what they are: emotional traps, energy drains, ego games. And once you've seen enough of life, once you've felt the pain of broken relationships over meaningless debates, you start choosing a different response. You let go. You breathe. You walk away with your dignity intact. There's a kind of quiet confidence that comes from knowing you don't need to prove yourself. You've already proven it by the way you live, by the things you've overcome, by the peace you've built within. That confidence doesn't need to fight. It doesn't need to shout. It just exists steady, grounded, unmoved. People will still try to draw you into arguments. They'll poke, provoke, misunderstand, and misjudge. But wisdom doesn't flinch. It stands back and observes. It asks, is this worth my energy? And most of the time the answer is no. So it chooses peace again and again. Not because it's incapable of arguing, but because it's evolved beyond the need to. This is where real maturity lies, not in how well you can argue, but in how well you can resist the urge to. Not in how loud you can speak, but in how clearly you can live. Wisdom is not silent because it's empty. It's silent because it's full of understanding, perspective, and purpose. And it knows with quiet certainty that the loudest lessons are often taught by those who no longer feel the need to argue at all. Energy is precious because it is limited, and once it's spent, it cannot be recovered in the same way. When you are young, it feels like you have an endless supply of it. You stretch yourself thin, give your time to everyone, argue, explain, fix, chase, and tolerate more than you should, all because you think you'll always have more to give. But as time passes and you grow older, you begin to realize that energy is not just about physical strength. It's mental, emotional, and spiritual too. And wasting it on things and people who do not deserve it becomes too costly. With age comes awareness. You begin to see how many moments were wasted on stress, how many days were lost to overthinking, and how many years were spent trying to force connections, maintain appearances, or live up to expectations that didn't reflect who you really were. You realize that not everything requires your reaction. Not every invitation deserves your acceptance. Not every conflict needs your presence. And not every person has earned the right to your attention. Energy, once scattered freely, is now guarded with intention. You learn to stop giving it away carelessly. You don't pour from your cup unless it's full. You don't overextend yourself to make others comfortable. You don't say yes out of guilt, and you don't stay just because you're afraid to leave. You choose peace over performance, rest over resentment, presence over pressure. This shift is not about becoming selfish. It's about becoming wise. You finally understand that you can't keep showing up for everyone else if it means constantly abandoning yourself. Your emotional energy becomes the most sacred. You protect your mind from negativity, distance yourself from toxic people, and avoid places where your spirit feels heavy. You stop explaining your worth to people who never valued you. You stop arguing with those who listen only to reply, not to understand. You understand now that just because someone invites you into their chaos doesn't mean you have to attend. You can wish them well and still walk away. You can love people from a distance and still prioritize your own peace. Mental energy, too, becomes something you manage with care. You no longer overload your schedule just to feel productive. You don't chase every opportunity if it doesn't align with your values. You don't entertain every thought or worry that enters your mind. You learn to observe without reacting, to detach from what doesn't serve your growth. You create space in your mind for clarity, focus, and stillness. And in doing so, you start to experience a kind of freedom that only comes when you no longer live in survival mode. Physical energy, once spent without thought, now becomes something you preserve with intention. You listen to your body, honor its limits, rest when you need to, and fuel it with love and care. You no longer wear exhaustion like a badge of honor. You don't prove your worth by how much you suffer. You've learned that being busy isn't the same as being fulfilled. Slowing down doesn't mean you're falling behind. It means you're moving with purpose. You understand that you are not a machine. You are a soul in a body that needs compassion, not punishment. And then there's spiritual energy, the deepest, most invisible kind. It's the sense of connection you feel to something greater than yourself. It's your sense of purpose, your values, your truth. As you age, you begin to guard this space like holy ground. You don't allow just anyone to speak into your life. You don't absorb opinions that contradict your soul. You don't compromise your beliefs just to fit in. You walk in alignment with who you really are, even if that means walking alone. Because you know now that the price of compromising your spirit is too high. Energy is precious because it defines the quality of your life. Where you place it determines what grows. What you feed lives. What you ignore fades. And when you stop spending your energy on everything that doesn't truly matter, you begin to have more for the things that do. More time for joy, more presence with loved ones, more space to dream, to heal, to breathe. You understand that life is not about how much you can do. It's about how deeply you can live. And deep living requires energy that is rooted, clear, and protected. You can't afford to waste yourself on the temporary, the shallow, or the draining. You only have so much to give in this lifetime. And now, finally, you know that your energy is not just important, it's sacred. Healing happens in quiet because quiet creates the space where the heart can truly listen to itself. In the rush of daily life, amidst the noise of demands, distractions, and endless input, there is rarely a moment to pause and let the wounds beneath the surface come to light. But in stillness, in silence, those wounds find room to breathe. Healing is not a loud process. It's a gentle unfolding, a slow return to wholeness that requires calm, patience, and the absence of external chaos. When you allow yourself quiet, you give your mind the chance to slow down. The constant chatter, the worries, the regrets, the fears can finally soften. In that space, emotions that were buried under layers of business begin to rise, not in a storm, but in a whisper. You begin to recognize the pain you've been carrying, the hurt you haven't acknowledged. And by simply naming it in the silence, you start to release its grip. The quiet is where you confront your true feelings without defense or distraction. It's where you can cry without apology, reflect without judgment, and simply be. Healing requires this kind of honesty. It requires a willingness to face the parts of yourself that are broken, vulnerable, and tired. But this facing doesn't happen when you are overwhelmed with noise, when your mind is pulled in 100 directions, or when you are constantly running away from your own thoughts. It happens when you still the noise, turn inward, and allow yourself to feel deeply and fully. The quiet holds space for your soul to speak its truth, for your heart to mend in its own time. In the quiet, you also find patience. Healing cannot be rushed. It doesn't follow a schedule or meet external expectations. It unfolds at its own pace, and often it feels slow or invisible. But quiet gives you the gift of time, a time to sit with your pain without trying to fix it immediately, a time to build resilience in the small moments of stillness, a time to remember that healing is not linear, but a winding path with ups and downs. It is in quiet moments that you learn to trust the process, to honor your own journey, and to offer yourself grace. The quiet also teaches you presence. Instead of running from discomfort, you learn to stay with it. You learn that feeling the pain doesn't mean you are weak. It means you are human. And by being present with your suffering, you open the door to transformation. The silence becomes a sanctuary where your wounds can be met with compassion rather than avoidance. This presence allows you to listen to the lessons your pain carries and to find meaning beyond the hurt. Many people fear silence because it can feel like loneliness or emptiness. But healing in quiet shows that silence can be a powerful companion. It reconnects you with yourself in a way that noise never can. It grounds you. It centers you. It reminds you that you are not defined by your past pain or your struggles, but by your capacity to heal and grow. The quiet is where you remember your strength, your resilience, and your worth. In quiet, forgiveness begins, not necessarily spoken aloud, but felt deeply within. You forgive yourself for mistakes, you forgive others for hurts, and you forgive life for its hardships. This forgiveness is not about condoning what happened, but about freeing yourself from the chains of resentment and anger. And that freedom can only be found in the stillness where you allow yourself to let go. The quiet also nurtures hope. It reminds you that healing is possible even when it feels distant. It invites you to imagine a future where the pain no longer controls you, where peace replaces turmoil, and where you can live fully again. This hope is a light that grows gradually in the silence, brightening the darkest corners of your heart. Healing happens in quiet because it is in the silence that you can hear your own heartbeat again. It's where you reconnect with your essence beyond the noise and distractions of the world. It's where you can gently rebuild yourself, piece by piece, until you become whole again. And as you embrace the quiet, you realize that healing is not just about fixing what's broken. It's about discovering who you truly are beneath the scars. ChatGPT said, "You've earned the right to prioritize yourself because every step you've taken, every challenge you've faced, and every sacrifice you've made has brought you to this moment. Life has demanded much from you. Time, energy, love, patience. And through it all, you showed up. You weathered storms that tested your spirit and endured hardships that shaped your character. Now, it's not only okay but necessary to put yourself first. This isn't selfishness. It's a declaration of self-respect and an acknowledgement of the journey you've traveled. For too long, many people live their lives trying to meet the expectations of others. They put their own needs aside to care for family, friends, co-workers, or society's standards. They often believe that selflessness is the highest virtue, that to prioritize themselves is to be selfish or vain. But the truth is far different. You cannot pour from an empty cup. If you continually sacrifice yourself without replenishing your own well, you eventually run dry. You lose your spark, your joy, your sense of purpose. Recognizing that you've earned the right to prioritize yourself is about preserving your vitality, so you can continue to give authentically when you choose to. Prioritizing yourself means honoring your needs, desires, and limits without guilt. It means saying no to what drains you and yes to what nurtures your soul. It means carving out time to rest, reflect, and recharge. You've walked through seasons of giving so much to others. Now it's time to turn that care inward. You deserve to invest in your mental health, physical well-being, and emotional balance. You deserve the same kindness and compassion you have offered to those around you. This right to prioritize yourself is also about boundaries. You've earned the wisdom to recognize what serves you and what doesn't. You've learned to protect your peace by setting limits on who and what you allow into your life. You understand that boundaries aren't walls to shut people out, but fences that keep your garden safe. They help you maintain your energy and focus on what truly matters. When you prioritize yourself, you're not isolating yourself. You're creating space to thrive. Many people struggle with guilt when they think about putting themselves first. That guilt is a sign that they've been conditioned to believe their worth depends on their usefulness to others. But your worth is inherent. It's not tied to your productivity, your role, or the sacrifices you make. It's a birthright. You have earned the right to take care of yourself because your well-being matters. When you prioritize yourself, you show up more fully for others because you are whole, not depleted. This shift in perspective often requires practice and courage. It may feel unfamiliar or even uncomfortable at first. You might worry about disappointing others or fear being judged. But with each small step of prioritizing yourself, whether it's taking a quiet moment for meditation, saying no to an obligation, or choosing rest over relentless activity, you reclaim your power. You affirm that your needs are valid, your time is valuable, and your life is worth living on your own terms. Prioritizing yourself also means following your passions and dreams. You've earned the right to pursue what lights you up, what makes your heart beat faster, and what brings meaning to your days. Whether that's learning something new, traveling, creating art, or simply spending time in nature, these pursuits are essential to your happiness. They remind you that your life is not only about survival, but about flourishing. There's a deep fulfillment that comes from recognizing you are the steward of your own life. You've earned the right to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, and what you dedicate your energy to. This ownership brings a sense of freedom and empowerment that no external approval can provide. You don't need to seek permission or justify your choices. Your life is yours, and you have every right to live it in a way that honors your truth. When you prioritize yourself, you also inspire others to do the same. You become a living example of self, respect, and healthy boundaries. You show that caring for yourself is not a luxury, but a necessity. This ripple effect encourages those around you to rethink their own relationship with self, care, and respect. Your decision to prioritize yourself helps build a culture where well-being is valued and people can thrive without sacrificing themselves. You've earned this right not because of perfection, but because of perseverance, because of resilience, because of every time you got up after falling, faced your fears, and chose to keep moving forward. You've earned it because you are human, complex, worthy, and deserving of love, starting with the love you give yourself. There's no expiration date on this right. It grows stronger with every passing day, every lesson learned, and every moment of self-compassion. In recognizing that you've earned the right to prioritize yourself, you give yourself permission to live fully and freely. You embrace the truth that your life matters and that your happiness is not negotiable. You step into a new chapter where self-care is not an afterthought, but a foundation. You honor your journey by choosing to be your own greatest advocate, protector, and champion. This is the freedom that comes from knowing you are enough, and you always have been. Peace is far more valuable than validation because peace comes from within, while validation depends on the opinions of others. Throughout life, many people chase validation, seeking approval, praise, or recognition from the outside world as a way to feel worthy or secure. But this external validation is fleeting and unreliable. It is fragile because it relies on forces beyond your control. Other people's feelings, moods, and judgments. When you prioritize peace over validation, you choose a deeper, more lasting sense of fulfillment that is not shaken by the unpredictable reactions of others. Validation can be addictive because it feels good to be seen, heard, and appreciated. The applause, the likes, the compliments, they all give a temporary boost to your ego and self-esteem. Yet, the moment that external validation fades or is withheld, the insecurity often returns with a vengeance. The cycle of seeking validation is exhausting and never ending because there is always someone whose approval you want but may never fully receive. Peace, on the other hand, is steady. It does not depend on others. It depends on your relationship with yourself. Choosing peace means learning to be content with who you are, regardless of whether others agree or recognize your worth. It means embracing your imperfections, your unique path, and your intrinsic value without needing a spotlight or applause. When you make peace your priority, you stop trying to prove yourself to the world. You stop bending to fit expectations that don't resonate with your soul. You free yourself from the need to control how others perceive you. Instead, you cultivate a quiet confidence that comes from knowing your truth and living authentically. The pursuit of validation often leads to anxiety and unrest. When you base your happiness on others' opinions, you become vulnerable to criticism, rejection, and misunderstanding. Each negative comment or lack of recognition can shake your sense of self. You become reactive, defensive, and sometimes even desperate to regain favor. This unstable foundation creates inner turmoil and restlessness. Peace is the antidote to this chaos. It is a refuge where you are grounded in your own worth, regardless of external circumstances. When you choose peace over validation, you also gain freedom. Freedom from the exhausting effort to maintain appearances, to please everyone, or to constantly seek approval. You stop living your life according to a script written by others and start writing your own story. This freedom allows you to make choices based on what truly matters to you, not what others expect. It encourages you to set boundaries, to say no without guilt, and to focus your energy on what nurtures your spirit. Peace is also healing. When you let go of the need for validation, you release the emotional weight of needing to be liked or accepted. You stop carrying the burden of others' judgments and opinions. This creates space for self-love, acceptance, and compassion. You become your own source of affirmation, which is the most empowering place to be. You learn to appreciate your own efforts, celebrate your own progress, and honor your own journey. This inner peace fosters resilience. So when external validation is absent, you remain steady and whole. Moreover, prioritizing peace over validation transforms your relationships. When you are no longer driven by a need to be approved, you interact with others more authentically and freely. You can listen without planning your next defense or approval, seeking response. You can share your thoughts and feelings honestly without fear of rejection. This authenticity builds deeper, more meaningful connections because people respond to genuine presence rather than performance. In a world that often glorifies external success and social approval, choosing peace over validation is a radical act. It challenges the cultural narrative that your value depends on how much attention or praise you receive. It reclaims your power by shifting the focus inward. Instead of constantly looking outward for confirmation, you turn inward for grounding and assurance. This shift nurtures a profound sense of calm and contentment that no external achievement can match. The peace you cultivate is not passive. It is active and intentional. It requires self-awareness, courage, and practice. It means noticing when you are seeking validation and gently redirecting your focus. It means embracing discomfort and uncertainty without trying to fix or control them through external approval. It means nurturing a relationship with yourself that is loving and patient, especially during times of self-doubt or challenge. Peace grows as you learn to trust yourself more than you trust others' opinions. It grows when you forgive yourself for past mistakes and release the need to justify your choices. It grows when you celebrate your uniqueness and stop comparing yourself to others. This peace becomes a foundation that supports you through life's ups and downs, offering stability and clarity. Ultimately, peace is freedom from the chains of needing to be seen a certain way or accepted by everyone. It is the quiet confidence that you are enough just as you are. It is the space where your true self can flourish without fear or pretense. Choosing peace over validation is a gift you give yourself, a gift that transforms how you experience the world and how you show up in it. It's a choice to live from a place of inner wholeness rather than external approval, and that choice changes everything. When you embrace peace over validation, you step into a life grounded in self-worth and authenticity. You free yourself from the exhausting need to seek approval and instead cultivate a deep, unshakable calm that comes from within. This choice empowers you to live honestly, set healthy boundaries, and nurture relationships built on genuine connection rather than performance. Peace becomes your anchor, your strength, and your guide, allowing you to navigate life's challenges with grace and confidence. Ultimately, prioritizing peace is not just a decision. It's a way of honoring yourself and living fully on your own terms.